بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. لله تعالى. Assalamu alaikum النساء. How are you feeling? ما شاء الله. Alhamdulillah, we're glad to see you. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to continue. Today, we're going to do extensive reading. We're going to spend the whole session reading, inshallah ta'ala, because we want to get through this book. I think we have many of the main points, and I'll just highlight if there are additional issues that we need to discuss. But I really want to get through this book because I think we got most of the points, and then I want to summarize and concentrate and go in details about certain points. But I don't want to delay the book to do that. So we're going to spend the next couple days doing extensive reading. And I would suggest you read ahead, each of you, at least 5 pages ahead every day. So wherever we stop, try to read 5 pages ahead before the next morning if you can, right? And that way, you have the process in your mind, and then when we come back, and I'll highlight it, right? Bismillah. We're on page 101. So we're starting on page 101. Bismillah. Let us begin.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. The author, may Allah Ta'ala have mercy upon him, said, Notice here that Ibn Taymiyyah spoke about the apparent meanings in response to a claim that they indicate likeness, tamthil, with the attributes of creation. He did not speak about absolute resemblance. We have pointed out in more than one place in this book that Ibn Taymiyyah did not condemn resemblance, tashbih, at all, and that he would only condemn likeness. As we mentioned earlier, likeness is complete correspondence between all attributes, while resemblance is only partial. Complete resemblance would be considered likeness. If you were to look at Ibn Taymiyyah's writings in which he condemned resemblance, you would find that he only meant the complete resemblance that is the same as likeness.
Here, before we go, please let us thank Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala and praise Allah for the recovery of our brother Tanweer. I notice he's up and he's here. So, mashallah, alhamdulillah, we're happy to see that he is recovering. And we continue to pray for his wife, Sister Kimberly. Let us recite Al-Fatiha for them and for the others of our group and our people who are sick from this COVID. And may Allah give them healing by the secret of Al-Fatiha. Fatiha. He might not know this, but I'll say it publicly. Brother Tanweer has become like a big bro, for me that I love with all my heart, a stand-up dude. I really, 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 really love that man, especially as one of my elders, and to see us together really makes me happy. That's just a sentiment of mine that I wanted to share. Now, go ahead.
When our scholars among the Ash'aris said that the apparent meanings of the text mentioning certain inscriptions, such as hand, yad, eye, ayn, face, waj, shin, sak, and so on, are not intended, they only meant the meanings that the anthropomorphists claimed were intended. The anthropomorphists claimed that the apparent
Here, I
meanings.
want you to quickly get in the habit of knowing the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are the source of disagreement between Ahl Sunnah and Al-Mushabbiha, Al-Mujassima, and Ibn Taymiyyah. I want you to get to know these words in Arabic, inshallah. So here, the author put, is all of them in Arabic there? Or do I got to
All
write
of
it?
them are in English.
Okay. So,
Second paragraph.
okay. So what they said, hand al-yad. But you could, let me just take the al off. Yad. Ayn. Sorry, I'm not a fast typer. What else?
Face and
Right.
then shin.
And shin sab. Please memorize all these words and their equivalent literal translation. Because when we discuss, we want to do something, and I need your help with this. We want to make it easier for people to stop attributing to Allah non-befitting attributes. So some things we just want to make standard in the Arabic language and move it to our English discourse, so that we no longer, when we speak about Allah, say hand, we just say yad. We never say eye, we say ayn. When we never say face, we say wajh, right? Etc. In this way, it would help us stop having anthropomorphic beliefs, right? We won't say Allah said he got a hand. We'll say Allah said he has a yad, or ayn, or wajh, for instance, right? And it will help because it will become a discourse for us. Similarly, when we say Allah, technically Allah is God in the English language. But because of all the bad concepts that go with the word God, most Muslims would never use God. We say Allah. And even when you say God, we find it kind of repulsive as American-speaking people, as Muslims. You say, like, I believe in God. We got all this other stuff that comes when we hear that word. So we just say Allah, right? Let's do the same thing for the other attributes of Allah, please. I think it's beneficial. Okay, go ahead.
The anthropomorphists claimed that the apparent meaning of ayn is the well-known body part. Excuse me. That the apparent meaning of yad is a physical limb. That wajh is that which is on the head and that contains two eyes, and that the sac is a body part. When the scholars of Ahl Sunnah saw that the anthropomorphists were claiming that the Quranic text indicated these meanings and ascribed them to Allah Ta'ala, they refuted them and said, these apparent meanings are not intended, because there are many semantical and circumstantial elements showing that they are not intended. What this means is that the meanings the anthropomorphists claim to be the apparent indications of the text are not the apparent meanings in the first place. Because if they were truly the apparent meanings, the divine text would not mention semantical and circumstantial elements showing otherwise. The disagreement is with regard to these meanings that only befit bodies and created things. We do not concede to the anthropomorphist and corporealist that these are the apparent meanings ascribed to Allah Ta'ala when the Quran is read. On the contrary, these meanings only seem apparent to one whose soul has already deviated away from proper belief in divine oneness and transcendence, and who is unaware of the rhetorical and linguistic styles of expression found in the Arabic language.
Mm-hmm. So, a lot of these words, they have specific meanings in Arabic, and they might not always coincide with what we understand in English from the words when we translate it. So in Arabic, you have a word that can bear certain meanings, but in the English language, we don't use that same word in the same context. So sometimes the literal translation is not reflective of the vastness of Arabic meanings for that same word. Do y'all follow? Like, for instance, Brother Talib is mentioning the word creator. Creator has different meanings according to the language, how you use it. If you use it with the meaning of bringing things from non-existence into existence, then that is only for Allah. And it is not permissible to use that for anyone other than Allah. But if you use it with the meaning of make things, assemble things, or develop things from things that are already brought from non-existence to existence, that's nothing wrong with it. So it depends how you use it, right? So it depends what is meant. So just the word itself is not the problem. It's the meaning you intend by the word. Now, go ahead.
Linguistic principles clarify the correct meaning to those who look into the Quran. False meanings will not come to the mind of one who is aware of these principles, and he will not call them apparent. This is why our scholars said to the anthropomorphist, "We know that it is incorrect to ascribe corporeality, jismiyah, and its implications, such as limits and compositeness, to Allah Ta'ala. Saying that these things are the apparent meanings of the divine text is like saying that the apparent meanings of the divine text are disbelief, and this is impossible. It follows."
Here, listen to that. He said, for one to say that these literal meanings, which entail bodily attributes or which necessitate that, are the apparent meanings of the text of the Quran and the Sunnah, is like saying that the apparent meanings of the text is kufr, because those meanings are blasphemous. And when you try to apply that to the text, that's like saying the text commits blasphemy. And so you must understand from what Allah intended and what people may misunderstand from what Allah revealed. There's two distinct different things. This is a good question. Let me answer it quickly. With the translation of the Quran in English, there's nothing you could do about it. Unfortunately, almost every translation of the Quran is going to have these errors, right? We are working on one now. I don't know how it came out, to try to, as much as possible, to limit this, right? But I don't know the rest of it. I only helped with the part of fixing these errors to the best of our ability, to try to put it in a way that it's not so dangerous. But that should be out soon. I don't know exactly when it's coming out, but I didn't do the rest of the translation. I only worked with a part of it. And that was when it was coming to the attributes of Allah, to try to alleviate this problem. And I'm quite sure just the natural translation is going to have shortcomings. But inshallah, in the meanwhile, you just got to learn, and then you correct as you go along. But we actually did do it, and it should be coming out soon. I think it's going to print soon, where at least we tried to catch all the verses that have this problem and put it in a way of bringing it to your attention not to do that. But I haven't seen the finished product. But we did do it. So inshallah, it will come out and we'll get to see how it came out. Now, and we're giving it away, so it's not being sold. So it was sponsored. So inshallah, when they come, they'll be available. Inshallah. May Allah. It's an effort. We're trying. Right? Go ahead.
It follows, therefore, that these meanings are not the apparent meanings of the text. For that reason, these verses must be interpreted in a way that is different from these so called apparent meanings. This is the sum of the dispute between our verifying scholars and the anthropomorphists that Ibn Taymiyyah defended. Because he was so prone to exaggerate in his words for the sake of aiding the doctrine of anthropomorphism, he would stop at negation of likeness. The most that he claimed was that
Anthropomorphism and resemblance. So بنصرة مذهب التجسيم والتشبيه. So both, because he did not only anthropomorphism but also resemblance. So because anthropomorphism gives indications of bodily attributes, but also resemblance can have that without being necessarily a body, because you can resemble in aspects of attributes.
the most that he claimed was that the apparent meanings of the text do not indicate likeness. We, on the other hand, say that resemblance is not the apparent indication within the text. Hence, our statement is more general than his. Statements from the scholars on this topic. Here we shall present some statements of the esteemed scholars concerning this topic and offer our comments. Imam as-Sanusi said in al-Barahim,
Shar al-Barahim, the explanation of al-Barahim.
and Shah, okay, al-Barahim. The things that most often mislead innovators are
This book
empirical.
you need to follow. As-Sunusi, Imam as-Sunusi, this creed, al-Barahim, or al-Aqidat al-Sugra, right? They are among the most famous books in the creed, right? They're taught in Azhar, they're taught all around the world. Most Sunni Muslims have studied the Sunusi Creed. So he has like 5 books that he wrote in the creed. And for those of you who are into that, Dar al-Taqwa is a famous publisher out of Syria. They published them, all 5 books, in a new, beautiful edition. But this one is the main one that is used. It's very famous in knowing the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Now,
The things that most often mislead innovators are empirical phenomena, awa'id, that the exalted unfolds, and the apparent text of the book and the sunnah that they do not comprehend. Ad-Dasuti commented on his statement, empirical phenomena, saying, such as the empirical observation that when fire is placed on a piece of wood, it burns it, and that when the fire is far from it, it will not burn. This empirical linkage indicates that fire possesses efficacy. This indication is illusionary and is not based on the intellect. This is similar to the statement that man has not seen any existing things except that they are bodies and accidents subsisting within bodies. Someone who says this might at that moment be inclined to say that there is nothing that exists at all unless it is a body or subsisting within a body. This is the same illusion to which Ibn Taymiyyah held. The judgment that nothing exists except that it is a body is not a rational judgment. Rather, it is an illusionary judgment that relies upon the empirically observed way upon which the creation are brought into being. The one who says this relies upon an analogy between what is seen and what is unseen, and for that reason you find such a person attributing the judgment upon what is seen, creation, to the Creator, and that is false.
and here, that is what I mentioned to you. This is common in the books of Al Wahhabiyah, where they make an analogy between a seen thing, created, and then that analogy they apply to Allah. And I wanted to show you that if I can. Give me a second. If I can find it real quick, I'll find it. If not, I'll get it later and show you. I'm going to just translate this so we save time, right? Here, he's talking about to show distinctions physically, right? And here he mentions about seeing, we witness, so this is wa'amal his, that's something that's physical by your senses, right? He says here, and I'm just going to point to the words for you, that when you see created things, right, they share in names and attributes, right, in the wording, but they are different in reality. So here, this is the part I want to point you to, right here. فَلِلْفِيلِ جِسْمٌ وَقُوَّةٌ وَلِلْبَعُودَةٍ جِسْمٌ وَقُوَّةٌ. For the elephant, there is a body and strength, right? And for the mosquito, there is a body and strength, right? But their bodies are different and their strength is different. That's well known. If it is permissible for them to be different and from created things, then it is also permissible between the created and the created by precedent, right? So he used the elephant and the mosquito and their body and strength, that they're different, to apply that to the creator and the created. I wanted to just show you that type of concept, right? That is deep. That's what he's talking about here. This analogy between created things, then to move it over to the creator and the created. That's Ibn Uthaymeen in his summary of this Tadmuriyah. That's their concepts. Which is very problematic. Naam, go ahead.
At-Dasuki commented on his statement and the apparent text of the book and the Sunnah, saying, "This is in addition to the empirical phenomena. His statement that they do not comprehend is an attribute of these apparent texts. The upshot of this is that the Mu'tazila were misled by the apparent meanings of the book and the Sunnah, such as his statement, "Whoever works righteous actions," and "whoever does wrong." They claimed that since Allah Ta'ala linked the words to the servant, it proves that man creates his own works, and for that reason, the prescribed punishments are applied to him. The only reason the consequences of killing are applied to him, they claimed, is because he is the creator of his own action. For if the master, Allah Ta'ala, created his action, he would not face the consequences of his act of killing or any other act. This is what the Mu'tazila said, and Ahl Sunnah refuted them, saying that the action is linked to the servant and he faces its consequences by way of acquisition. Cusp. The master does what he wills and he is not asked about what he does. This is one of the angles of difference between Ahl Sunnah and the Mu'tazila, and in its primary meaning, it is the cause for the differences with all other sects, such as the anthropomorphists. When the Mu'tazila saw that the actions are ascribed to people, they employed their conjecture and thought that this ascription can only be correct if people create their own actions. According to them, the only way in which an action can be ascribed to man is if he is the creator of it. This restriction is not accepted, for it is an analogy they drew between the unseen and the seen. As they expressed it, since certain actions are ascribed to Allah Ta'ala, and they are only ascribed to Him by way of creation, and since actions are ascribed to man, too, they must also be their creation. As you see, besides this being an illusionary judgment, it is also an analogy between the Creator and the creation and actions. We shall also see how the anthropomorphists drew a comparison between the Creator and creation in attributes and entities. Both of these groups base their beliefs upon illusion and empirical phenomena, not upon rational judgments.
Right.
Aklas,
And just be careful of this. Now, when you got this point, some of you who may have the books of Al Wahhabiyya, like Fawzan and Bin Baz and Ibn Uthaymeen, you're going to see this a lot now that it's pointed out to you. This analogy between two created things, then to use that same analogy to Allah and say, and it's more perfect with Allah, but the same analogy. And this you should put it up. There is no analogy between the creator and the creation. There is no analogy between the creator and the creation. This is something you need to keep in mind, and we mentioned it before. You can't discuss Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the terms that you discuss creation. It doesn't work. There is no resemblance between Allah and the creation. Now,
Sunnah, however, avoided both of these positions by noting of the difference between the creation and the real, Allah Ta'ala, in actions, attributes, and entities. They did not draw a resemblance between Allah Ta'ala and His creation, not in His entity, His attributes, or His actions. At the same time, they affirmed that works are ascribed to man and that he is legally responsible and accountable for his actions. For man to be ascribed with actions, they did not deem it necessary that they create them. Allah Ta'ala alone is the creator. This is where the concept of acquisition, kasb, originates. They said, man is ascribed with his own actions inasmuch as he has acquired them, not that he is their creator. Allah Ta'ala is ascribed with his own actions as their creator, not as one who acquired them. This is how Ahl Sunnah differed with the Mu'tazilite. Ahl Sunnah did not draw a resemblance between Allah Ta'ala and creation and actions. Ahl Sunnah were not driven by their illusions, and they did not take the customary empirical judgments as the limits for Allah Ta'ala. Such judgments are limits for creation, so how can they be ascribed to the Creator? Consider how the Mu'tazila held to Allah Ta'ala's words, "Whoever works righteous actions," and "whoever does wrong," in order to say that man creates his own actions. They thought that the apparent meaning of these verses is that men are creators, and thus they took that as their position. Clearly, these verses ascribe works to man, but is that because they create their own actions, Or is it for another reason, such as acquisition? This subtlety was lost on the Mu'tazila. In Sharh al-Barahim,
Let's stop there. Where you at?
page 105, the second paragraph.
And this one is not shar here. Because Ibrahim, that is the commentary as well. Uh, what is hoped here, right? And I'm hoping to inspire, and encourage others to get involved with explaining other Sunnis who actually understood the creed to get involved in expressing these matters, right? We need more of us to articulate these concepts, right? More teachers, more Ahl Sunnah, especially African American teachers. Unapologetically expressing the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. We need more. There's not enough of us talking, right? And there is room. We don't have to compete with one another. Everyone can do it at their level because everyone has different levels of learning, right? At your level, you do what you do. At the next person's level, they do what they do. And at the next person's level, they do what they do. Because we have to reach the entire country and then the world from our side, right? And especially in the African American communities, we're getting slaughtered in terms of spreading this knowledge. I don't think we realize how far we're falling behind. And we have to get busy, right? And if you look at it, the old one, each one teach one, right? We have to get back to that philosophy. Each one teach one, right? And inshallah, we'll get it done after time. Get out our own way. Let's do the work, right? Don't be lazy. You know, we have to get busy. We have to work, right? Can I give you some advice? All of us, don't be afraid of your deficiencies. Shaitan will use your deficiencies to keep you idle. Don't be afraid of your deficiencies. Shaitan will use your deficiencies to keep you idle. And the oppressor will use your deficiencies to keep you oppressed. You have to overcome it. You ever see some people, like they're college graduates or university graduates, master's degrees, PhDs, and they would tell you, some of them, my grandfather couldn't read or write, or my grandmother couldn't read or write. Any of y'all heard stories like that? The person may be a master's degree, got a PhD, and they say, my grandmother or grandfather couldn't read and write. Y'all ever heard a story like that? Right? But that grandmother or grandfather who couldn't read and write pushed their children to education. And then usually their children push their children to education till they reach that level. Right? So you see how it works? And we're going to be like that. Had the great grandmother or grandfather been afraid or been discouraged because of their deficiencies, their grandchildren wouldn't have reached those high levels of education, right? So that same spirit, maybe many of us don't have all the talents we need to do this work, right? But we got to have that same energy as our grandparents or great grandparents, right? I remember, I'll share personally with me the same concept. I had a guy, right, when I was in Florence, Colorado, uh, in the feds. There was this brother, he was from Fifth Ward, Texas. Fifth Ward, Texas. I think that's in Dallas, I think, or Houston, one of them. But it's an area in Houston, I think. It's called Fifth Ward, Houston or Dallas. I'm not sure which city. You know, the Ghetto Boys, rap guys from that same area, Fifth Ward. Where's that? Houston or or Dallas? But this brother, right? He had like at that time, I don't know, I think he had like 27 years or 40 years, somewhere around there. I don't know if he had 20 something in or something like that. But he had a crap load of time, right? And we were friends. And so, we friends, we talk. And I remember one day he said to me, he had a son that was in jail, and this one was in jail, and his homies was in jail, and just like, because that neighborhood is real bad in Fifth Ward. And he said to me, he said, yo, man, this blank blank stuff got to stop. Because he had a daughter that was like going to school and trying to come through it, right? And he was trying to get her to college, and and he used to work in the factory, like double shifts and everything, and would send his money home. And he said, I'm telling you, uh, I mean, this stuff gonna stop in my family, right? And he was like making sure that his daughter would go through college and do everything. And he did that from the prison, like working hard, right? Doing his part to ensure that that won't happen, right? That spirit we got to have in the deen. No matter where we at, we have to push that our children or grandchildren are way further ahead than us. So don't look at us now. That's why I said it's not about us. We may be struggling, but if we keep working, future generations will excel, right? We got to think like that, right? We got to think like that. MashaAllah. Yeah, we got to work. You know what I'm saying? So Do the same in this concept for the deen, right? Don't let nobody keep us down, right? No matter what they say, just ignore and keep going. Keep striving. So the day we produce what we need in our communities, right? And we got to do that in every aspect: religion, business, education, culture. We have a lot of work to do. Please, 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 let's work together to make a better future for our people. Like, make that a priority for us, inshallah. All right. We have a reading at 6:30 in the book Al-Ash'ira. We will continue that at 6:30. So please join us then. Barakallahu fikum wa jazakum Allahu khaira. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.